Welcome to What's Brewing with IAT Insurance Group, where episode after episode we cover the latest marketplace trends with subject matter experts who are fueling our mission to provide insurance answers together. Grab your cup and let's settle in.
Hi, I'm Katie Bloomquist and welcome back to What's Brewing. I'm a loss control specialist here at IAT. I'm here with my colleague and fellow loss control specialist, Tim Unger. Hurricane season is quickly approaching and we're here to share how you can prepare commercial properties before, during, and after a storm. Tim, what type of commercial properties does IAT insure?
So when we're talking about hurricane preparedness, we're talking about different types of commercial property. That would include your typical office buildings, also include condos, and of course, IAT, and under our TransGuard name, we insure a lot of warehouses, a lot of moving and storage. So I think that's the big focus for our discussion today, is those type of businesses. But I think we should just start off talking about the hurricane season and what we're looking at this year. So every year, the different entities will provide an outlook of what the hurricane season is going to look like. There's a couple different places like Colorado State University. I know that sounds odd, a place out here, out in the Rocky Mountain region, telling us about hurricanes, but they are kind of the number one go-to with forecasting the hurricane season. And so it officially runs from June 1st to November 30th every year. And of course, the peak time is always towards the late summer into October. So August to October is really the time where we get to see the most of the storms. But what they're projecting so far for 2026 is roughly, they're saying the hurricane season to be slightly below average this year, which I guess overall, first and foremost, is a good thing. With about 11 to 16 named storms, they're saying 4 to 7 actual hurricanes, and 1 to 4 major hurricanes expected. So Colorado State University has a little bit different numbers, but they say the total storms they figure are going to be about 13, hurricanes about 6, and they're saying probably 2 hurricanes that will be category 3 or above. So that just means it's going to be a hurricane with 116 miles per hour sustained winds or greater. So those are the ones we don't want to see. But that's what they're saying. So what's typical? A typical hurricane year is, on average, is about 14 total storms and about 7 hurricanes, with about 3 of those category 3 or above storms. So we're slightly below average. And why is that? They're saying it's slightly below average because of, everybody's heard of El Nino. El Nino is specifically, not to get too far into the weeds, but just to say El Nino creates wind shear, right? So wind shear throughout the Atlantic basin. And as it creates that, it causes or doesn't allow tropical storms, hurricanes to form. So it kind of rips them apart, so to speak. So that's what we're looking at. They're looking at a higher El Nino year. Matter of fact, some forecasts are saying it's going to be a super El Nino year, but that's what they're saying. A hurricane needs warm waters and calmer winds to get itself put together as to fuel it and to intensify it. However, since we're talking about hurricane preparedness, I think it's important to note that in 2023, we had the same forecast with a big El Nino year, and it turned out to be a heavy hurricane year. So it blew away all the forecasts, and that's because the Atlantic Ocean was way warmer than anybody anticipated it being, and it fueled all these storms. So why do I bring that up? I bring that up just to say we should be prepared. So don't let the below average hurricane forecast make you say, well, we don't have as much to worry about this year. If you are in the Gulf region or the Atlantic region, now's the time with this, we prepare to get yourself and your business totally prepared for the upcoming season. So preparedness is the key, and that's what Katie and I are going to spend some time talking a little bit more about today, and what we can do.
Yeah, so some of those exposures from the hurricanes that you described, especially when the wind gets over 100 miles per hour, is lots of damage to roofs. So roof damage from high winds, it could be minor, from shingles or tiles coming off, to major removal of the roof itself. Properties can also sustain damage from high-flying debris, which can not only break windows and lead to further damage from water intrusion or even from the wind itself internally into the properties. And also, if there's not a lot of wind but a lot of rain, you can sustain structural damage from the wind, from minor wind, if there's a lot of rain or water damage that saturates the walls and floors that require extensive repair. And also, we forget about the property could sustain damage from the equipment outside of the property, such as HVAC systems, to inside the property, such as production lines. So it's really important to button up the property and ensure exposures are identified and maintained prior to a hurricane. And also, a lot of things that people don't talk about are the secondary perils. So many times you can withstand the hurricane winds and rain. However, secondary perils do come into play, which include storm surges that can cause damage outside of the hurricane. And in rare cases, wildfires in dry coastal areas or inland areas. So it's not just the hurricane itself, there are secondary perils to the property. And something that a lot of businesses can improve on, from my experience in the field, is business interruption planning, where a business can be directly impacted from a loss, where they can't sustain business, so they don't have any alternative ways to conduct business, or identifying supply chain disruptions that can secondarily impact their losses, or power outages that allow them not to continue with business. So I don't know if that's your same experience, Tim, with businesses that you've visited.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we do as loss control representatives, we go out and visit our customers, is to help them a lot with their business continuity plans, or as Katie said, business interruption. So business continuity is kind of the phraseology that's used. It just refers to your company's ability to maintain your essential functions before, during, and after a crisis, and having a formal plan of how to deal with those type of things. There's FEMA has come out with some data about that specifically, and back in 2014 they put all this data together, them and the U.S. Department of Labor, and said that about 40% of small businesses won't reopen after a major catastrophe like a hurricane. About a year later, after the event, about 25% of these more small businesses will close. And I think this is the best statistic. 75% of businesses without a business continuity plan will fail within 3 years of a major event like a hurricane. So I think first and foremost, this is the thing that we need to pay attention to, is having the opportunity now to take time to look at your operations and look at your business and think about, what is it if we lose today that would not allow us to function, not allow us to do our normal operations. There's a handy little website and some information that's from the U.S. government through the Department of Homeland Security's put together. It's called Ready Business, and you can look at it under www.ready.gov. But there's a specific one that they have for dealing with a business continuity plan, planning for a hurricane. And I think it gives helpful information to kind of put a checklist to look at your overall operation. Katie mentioned some things, of course, that, in a hurricane, you're talking about the roofs, you're talking about the storm surge, the flooding, and of course there's people. We always forget about the people, but it's not just the structure, but it's the people. How, you hear a hurricane coming in, if people commute to work, maybe they can't get into work, and they're not going to have them allowed to get into work. How is your company going to function? So a great little scenario that I think that they always put out is telling you that, let's for a moment think in your mind, if a hurricane hits, it hits your business, and the general consensus from the ready.gov is to say that number one, plan that your business is going to be out of operation for a minimum of 3 days, probably more than that. That 3 days, I think, is pretty conservative if a hurricane has made landfall. Well, let's just say that's the case, and they estimate 80% of a building's value is in its equipment, its inventory, or its other content. So think about what you're storing, what you have there, what your computer systems are. Are you able to access those offline? Are you able to back those up now so that employees that might have to work from home can look at that different type of stuff? They also say that expect that about 50% of your inventory, so if we talk about those companies that we insure that have warehouses, and even if it doesn't have to be a huge warehouse, but a small warehouse, about 50% of their inventory is no longer going to be usable or damaged. And then another 50% of your electronics or computer systems or equipment will be damaged during the event. So these are the things, the scenario you kind of put forward. Okay, if that's the case, what do I plan for? What do I need to make sure that I'm addressing now? Katie talked about a lot about the building, the structure itself, and of course the surrounding structure as well, the poles, your neighboring buildings, the different things, you might have a signage on your building you need to make sure is tied down, those type of things. But I think it's important to understand, how do I come out of this at the end? I mean, what is it, knowing that these statistics say the chances are, if you don't have a continuity plan of how you survive, get through this, that your business will fail.
So I guess the most critical thing is planning for the hurricane, having a formal plan in place, identifying critical personnel, critical infrastructure, ensuring records are backed up, or you can access them in the event of a loss. And I think a lot of things people don't do well is documenting the property with videos or pictures. So insurance companies know what the property looked like before or after a loss. And then, we did all this preparing and stuff, but sometimes companies need critical personnel on site during the storm. So making sure all other employees are following evacuation orders, ensuring, non-essential workers leave in plenty of time to, like you said, Tim, we don't think about the people, but to evacuate safely, and setting up secondary, I guess, operations from home if they can remotely. Provide essential maintenance or essential personnel, such as maintenance and management, with the supplies they need to withstand the hurricane, and some of that stuff is first aid, equipment, ways to communicate if communication lines go down, and if they can do safely, activate emergency generators. And then it's also important to always communicate with staff and vendors. Don't forget the vendors, to let everyone know what state you're in, like the conditions you're in, and expected time frame to resume operations. Like Tim said, 3 days, but in most cases you could probably extend that out to 2 weeks to a month, depending on where the activity happens and what the damage is. So that's during the storm. After the storm, I would wait for clearance. It's best to wait for clearance, make sure the floodwaters go down. You don't want to be walking through electrical lines, down power lines, or broken glass, making sure you've got good PPE available to prevent injury, because the most common accidents or losses to personnel are slips, falls, electrocution, and injury from other objects, such as broken glass. And then, like I indicated earlier, documenting the property with photos and videos prior to the loss. It's important to take video or photos after the loss to show what type of damage was done. And a lot of people don't think of this. It's typically in insurance policies, but you also want to mitigate any future loss to property. So making minor repairs to the property before an insurance adjuster can come out to evaluate the conditions to mitigate any additional loss. Any other insight to that, Tim?
Yeah, along those lines, I would just say that you're not going to be able to mitigate if you don't have the necessary resources on hand. So that's part of the preparation piece right now, is to ensure that you have things like sandbags, right? That you have things like stuff to board up the windows. And when it's time, when you come after the storm, do you have the tools to properly clear debris? Do you have tools to get into the building, those type of things? But also say things that people don't think about, as Katie mentioned early on, that one of the biggest things that happen during hurricanes, because of the high winds, is damage to the roofs. Should never have an employee go up the roof by themselves. You never know what that extent of damage is, or the best case scenario is to have a professional go up there. But if you and your employees are assessing the damage, it's best to have two up there to be so they're careful and conscientious. They don't know what they're going to be finding up there. I also think it's a lot of our insured, especially our warehouses and things, have fire sprinkler systems. The odds are if the hurricane is bad enough, it's going to knock out most mechanical systems, most electrical systems, so that may not be operating. So you need to ensure, number one, that people don't think about this, but because fire sprinkler systems might be down, then there's now a higher chance of a fire that can't be controlled. You're not thinking about that because you think about all the rain and the water, but the truth is now you need to make sure that there are no ignition sources in your warehouse, that those are all eliminated, that the electrical, hopefully before the storms even come, you shut off the electrical system, you shut off the breakers so that they're not shorting out and they can cause something to happen. That might also mean that you're going to have to establish a fire watch. Now you're going to have somebody stay at your building to ensure that a fire doesn't break out because the system might be down or it may not be able to report the fire to the local fire department like the system normally would do. So those type of things are also you need to make sure you're thinking about. But it's very important, the safety of, especially after the fact, the safety of your people and you yourself. If it's a smaller company and you are the owner taking care of everything, that you need to make sure you have the good precautions. And if you have somebody that's going to be remaining on site, how are you communicating with them? Cell towers might be down, might be out, so you might have to have just a radio, a handheld radio, portable radio system that might be good to use. So all those things are things you have to put in your mind before the storm comes, the storm hits. The government will give us the warnings, the hurricane watch, and then a hurricane warning. So the hurricane watch is something that usually comes out 48 hours. The hurricane warning is 36 hours. By then, that's too late to gather these type of materials. By then, it's too late it's during that point, maybe you can board up things and you can sandbag areas that are prone to flooding. But think about your warehouse and your items that you're storing in there, and maybe you need to raise things up or remove them from the warehouse and have them a secondary storage location you might have, and then also make sure that you're keeping things in place that can help you with your mitigation factors, whether it's tarps or shovels and picks and tools that you might need to mitigate everything after the fact.
Now that's good. That's good information, and Tim and I have provided a lot of information on resources to help with your property and business and employees. But if you need any additional information, please feel free to reach out to our loss control department. We appreciate you spending time with us today, and thank you for listening to What's Brewing, and we'll see you next time.
Providing insurance answers together is what we do best. Thanks for tuning in to the latest episode of What's Brewing. Until next time.